Hi, everyone. I'm excited and nervous to talk about this new subject matter. I've been kind of pulling it together recently. But I figure a lot of you here are in a state of pain and discomfort and struggle, trying to figure out what went wrong and where to go from here. So I thought that a helpful series of webinars on kind of understanding how change happens within ourselves, how change happens in our lives, how change might happen in another person or in our relationship might be a helpful addition to our repertoire as we talk about, building and healing and getting to healthy relationships and healthy dynamics. So today is kind of going to be just change 101, so to speak, just kind of understanding what happens in our neurobiology, what happens in our psychology, and just talking about that. And of course, please always ask any of your questions. It doesn't necessarily need to be on topic, but let's talk about change. So when we're in a state of pain and discomfort and struggle, oftentimes we're looking to change that status, right? So change from maybe an unhealthy situation to getting healthier, from an uncomfortable space to feeling more comfortable, to relieve the pain, and maybe move from sadness to joy or happiness. The only, well, not the only, but one of the issues is that our brain, so then therefore our body, loves homeostasis, right? Our brain loves kind of just the normal pathways, normal routine, things to be as expected. When we are exposed to any kind of new stimulus, any kind of new reality, a new challenge, our body, our brain creates a stress response. So that's kind of where the term stress comes from, because it takes a lot more oxygen and a lot more blood for the brain to kind of start creating and developing new pathways, right? So, so an additional part, so that's kind of a physiological part that happens when there's change or a new stimulus coming in that we have to kind of receive. And as a background, just if you want to do more research on the subject matter, I found a relatively helpful source. It's The Neuroscience of Change by Dr. Kelly McGonigal. So, and after that kind of physiological response to a new stimulus, that stress response, we have in the emotional stress of not knowing what the outcome is, right? So we have this new stimulus, this change that's already occurring, but we're not really sure where it's going to go. And of course, whenever that happens, our instincts are to try to control and manage the change, our physical response, the external environment that we don't have control of, try to kind of manage and control that. And it often ends up with us kind of pushing back on the stress and the change. So it's kind of like we're stressing about being in a state of stress. Dr. McGonigal uses this really great example to kind of help illustrate that, how we struggle with change. So she kind of asks you to put your hand on your chest and your body and slowly feel yourself breathing in and out. If you can do that, she's kind of using that as a symbol of when we have oxygen coming into our body, your biology is already changing. Your body and this world and this environment is already in a constant state of change. If you're here in this webinar, obviously something's already happened that has spurred you to seek out help and support and clarity. So change has already been triggered. So that's how she's symbolizing, this breathing in, breathing out process, bringing in oxygen, blood, it's changing our physiology, etc. And then she encourages people to kind of say, well, now I want you to breathe in really, really deep for 6 seconds, hold it for another 3 seconds. So, and then blow it out. And then do that now breathe in really, really deep for 2 seconds, but blow it out hard for 6 seconds. And she's trying to illustrate us trying to control the change that's occurring, trying to control the environment around us. You can sustain it for a temporary short period of time, but even for those couple deep breaths and strong blowing out moments that I had, I get a little lightheaded. It's not sustainable. It's quite exhausting. And it's trying to illustrate that the more we try to control this changing process, the more exhausting it can be, the more suffering that can occur inside of it, within those moments. So another thing that she encourages when you're in the state of change, and she talks more about the neurobiology or neuroscience of it, which is to pay mindful attention to what's going on around you. This can improve the process of the change and the outcome of the change. So for instance, when there is a new stimulus, so again, let's say these people who are here because they've been betrayed by the partner, that is a new stimulus, that is a new reality. You have been confronted with information that kind of knocked you down. It's unexpected. You're in a state of hurt and betrayal. There's a lot of fear and harm. And then so that's your internal struggles. And then there's external issues, right? Of what your partner's choices are, maybe the impact this might have on your children and your family, other things to consider, your job, financial stressors, etc. Right? So there's both internal issues and external issues going on, all affecting the change and the stress. She's just asking that you pay mindful attention to all of these different elements. And when we're saying that, it's just kind of noticing what's coming up for you and acknowledging and accepting its presence versus, let's say, fighting back on it. She talks about this smoking cessation study that was done where people were put in MRI machines and given the stimulus, and they've been trying to quit smoking, but they've been failing at it and struggle with that. And they provided them a stimulation of looking at someone smoking. And they found that, the urge and the cravings and the triggering parts of those people in the experiment, those who were actually kind of able to just pay mindful of attention of it and pay attention of looking at the person smoking and going, wow, that looks really great to me. Wow, I'm right now, I'm dealing with the shame with the fact that I feel like I'm a failure because I've not been able to stop smoking. And I know it's causing me so much harm, and kind of paying mindful attention of the craving that they're feeling in the body, the stimulus that they're looking at, and bringing it to the forefront of their mind actually lowered the urge, stimulation, and craving in their body. Another thing to consider is, how do you view this stressful situation? How do you view this change? So meaning the thoughts that you have around it, because that will strongly affect your response. So let's say, you saw this alarming text and your heart rate shoots up into the air and you wonder if your partner is acting out again. And then at the same time, you go through this for weeks and months, and it's the state of, oh my God, if I keep feeling this level of stress and hypervigilance, I'm going to die. Like, this is going to put me in a grave because I'm in this constant state of really high blood pressure, high pulse, high stress level. It makes me a horrible person. I can't even think straight. I'm, falling behind in work. My kids are suffering as a consequence. This particular stressful response is destroying everything around me. Versus she kind of challenges you to reframe those concepts into thinking about how you view the stress that's occurring. So she kind of talks about the physiological response to stress being quite impressive, you know, that there's all these kind of stressful hormones that go out and cause your blood pressure to go up and your heart to respond. But then there's also these healing hormones that tend to happen afterward. And she was encouraging you to kind of say, like, this is exactly how my body is supposed to be responding. You know, I'm in a state of stress. It's supposed to be helping me in this moment. And, you know, I just need to listen to it. So some of the constructs she was challenging you to maybe change to is, this is part of the changing process. It's, you know, it is horrible and uncomfortable, but it is part of the process. My body knows what it's doing. I will get through this. And, you know, this is my new reality. I had a client who was struggling with her husband. She'd uncovered that her husband had been having an affair for the past year or so. And she said every morning she had to wake up and kind of tell herself, no, this isn't a really bad Lifetime movie. This is my new life. And you know, I'm currently a single mom because at the time she asked her partner to leave the home. Their marriage may not work out. And she just kind of put one foot in front of the other with this new reality and kind of trained her body to say, no, like this is it. This is what it is right now. Try to put one foot in front of the other. Some other extra things that I thought were really interesting about the neuroscience of change was that your stress response, so once, you know, the veins in the blood are constricted and you kind of go through that stress, high blood pressure response, it actually releases, you know, she said that basically the cuddling hormone, oxytocin, right? We call it that because oxytocin's involved when there's like touching and hugging, and it's kind of like one of the love drugs, basically, that as our bodies, in addition to releasing a lot of uncomfortable hormones during the stress response, will also release a heavy dose of oxytocin, which she interprets as a way of the body nudging you and kind of pushing you to seek out connection. That oxytocin is the love hormone. It's the thing that makes you feel when you're in connection with another person saying, this is good, keep doing this. You want these people around you. And I thought that was really interesting because it's basically the more oxytocin that you're keeping in your body when you're in those states of discomfort and stress, the more your body will heal and get back kind of to a level of homeostasis. And she said also that similar healing hormones are released when you are providing services to others. So the two messages I heard from that are, obviously, when you're in a state of stress, and oftentimes that accompanies a state of shame and hurt and pain, which will make you instinctively kind of withdraw, right? Because a lot of us, we struggle with crying in front of people. We struggle with the brutality of some of our betrayal trauma stories, right? How are people going to react? How are they going to judge me, etc.? And instead of seeking out connectivity, we're in this state of stress response, we withdraw. But she's basically encouraging us to do the opposite, to push through that oxytocin when you're in those deep talks, when you're hugging another person, or even if you can lean into your partner, if it's safe enough and applicable in those stressful moments, that can create more healing. And in addition, when you're in these stressful states, in these states of change, to be of service to other people, you know, to think if there's something that you can do to help another, to help your child, I don't know, whatever that is for you. And I will say, because this is going to be a secondary part on my series of change, is that if any of you are familiar with the 12 steps, I thought it was really interesting that I was listening to a couple different theories on the neuroscience of change and how to have long-lasting change and how to manage stress responses. And I thought it was so interesting that if you are familiar with 12 steps, some of the major fundamental cornerstones of 12 steps are exactly the things that she mentioned in the neuroscience of change, which is that the goal is to change, right? To own that there is definitely a problem and that, you know, it's unmanageable and I need to work on this. But it's not just I need to work on this. I need to be in connection with others to help me through this because I am incapable of doing this myself. And then there's also a mindfulness piece to it, right? Of owning that these are the harms that I've done. These are the things that I struggle with. This is my level of powerlessness. And I need to be very aware that these are my personal struggles. And then even down to the being of service to others, which I think is what, step 11? But it's going out there, and even when you're in the state of pain, even when you're not, when you're incredibly, you know, perfectly imperfect, you still go out there and you try to be of service and in connection with other people. So that's kind of the change and stress response 101 lecture that I want to give. I want to provide kind of additional lectures and information on the different types of change, and also incorporating some pieces of why I personally believe 12 steps can be helpful and beneficial to all of us. It's not just an arbitrary legalistic structure of do this, don't do this, this is right, this is wrong. These are, you know, proven ways of helping you create long-lasting, deep, soulful change within yourselves and others. And
thank you. And as a 12 stepper, I totally agree. That gave me the recipe book for altering my life. I was going down this path, and it gave me tools to use to make those changes and to continue to. And you're very right about the 12-step programs are a we program. That I'm powerless by myself, but in the community, and attached and doing service and all of those things, I stand a good chance. And if I do it, they suggest it's not, you have to, and as you said, it's not legalistic. It's very much, here are our suggested program of change. That's what they call it. So it's an opportunity, but I know some people have resistance to that. So I love what you're talking about. It was fascinating to me to talk about homeostasis and to think that your brain and body, even if you're in a negative situation, if that's what it's used to, that from what I'm hearing, you're saying that's what it wants to go back to, because that's what it understands. And this is my normal, even if it's uncomfortable. But it makes a lot of sense to me, because I have witnessed lots of people in the 12-step community that come in and it's like they just, in any form of recovery, they just can't quite get there. But if I apply that to it, it makes sense that they, I'm so afraid of change, or I'm so uncomfortable with change, that I'm going to continue doing the known, even if it's not really working for me. So.
Yeah, I talk a lot about the pain paradox because I see it all the time, right? I'm obviously, as a therapist, I'm highly invested in learning how and why people succeed in long-lasting change. And I notice one of the biggest hang-up and tie-ups is this thing called the pain paradox, which is, we think when we're in this state of discomfort and pain, our knee-jerk reaction, our instant reaction is pull away. So the example I always use is, if we touch a hot pot, we touch it and we quickly pull our hand away. And so I think in all other elements of our life, we approach pain and discomfort that way of, oh, just go back to what we know. Don't ever touch that hot pot again. That was a bad idea. On to what is status quo. But I feel like the truth of that pain message is not run away, avoid, don't do. It's just do it smarter, listen to the information and feedback that it's been giving you, which is, yes, touching a hot pot skin to fire is not a good idea, but you need to wear a glove next time and just be very careful. Yeah, it's really interesting how much we struggle as humans to change, but our brain is lazy. We love status quo.
Which explains a lot too, when even if somebody has tools, if they haven't really ingrained them yet, so they're not the normal. So if you have learned a few tools and you're trying to make that change, something like you touch the hot pot, your instant reaction is to go back to the way I used to do it, and which is I'm not going to do that. So versus pushing through. I'm fortunate that I learned early on that the only way to get to the other side of the pain is through the pain, and that the change was worth it. Somehow I got that lesson. And so even when I'm going through a difficult situation, now I have enough probably neural pathways that let me know that I'm going to get to the other side, and I have got some tools, including reaching out to people. I thought it was interesting too when you're talking about connecting to people, because I thought when I'm upset, and I'm a social person in case anybody hasn't figured that out, but when I'm upset, the worst thing for me to do is to isolate. I am immediately going, I got to call, the safe people in my life. I just need to, even if it's kind of venting, it helps me reframe. So for me, that reaching out and attaching, really has made a tremendous difference. The worst place for me to be is up here and thinking how horrible everything is, because somebody can help me with the reframe and go, well, in fact, I went to a 12-step meeting. I'm going to share this really shortly, but I went to a 12-step meeting, and I was like, everything was horrible. Basically my husband and I had a fight. We hardly ever fight, but we had a doozy. And so I went off to my 12-step meeting, and my friend looks at me and she said, what's going on? I was like, Rah! And she said, so let's see, you have your health. She starts listing everything, and I just like that, I shifted, and she goes, and you really love this man. Yes. And he didn't say that to be hurtful. No. So like literally in 2 minutes, she'd taken me from my life was destroyed to, I'm good. So it was fascinating to help get the reframe on that. So I really, when you were talking to about the oxytocin, what I heard you say was so if you're flooded with all these negative chemicals, but you also are flooded with, kind of an equal part of the oxytocin. Is that what I heard?
Yeah, she was basically saying that oxytocin is as much as part of the stress response as any of those other hormones that create that kind of uncomfortable feeling.
So that was fascinating. I've never heard that before.
I've never heard that either.
Yeah, so fascinating, and I really like the breathing exercise too, to think about. I can't do this very long, and so I need to understand that I don't want to be uncomfortable, so I needed to move to something that's better for me. With the smoking cessation program, I thought what you were going to say was, they were triggered by all of that. So to be able to be mindful while they're watching that, and to be able to look at it, and I guess they were mindful, so therefore they were putting it in a different perspective rather than, pushing it down and ignoring it, but still having the urge to do that. So.
Yeah, there was just some kind of correlation, causation about acknowledging and accepting the struggles around it, the presence of the uncomfortable feelings, the thoughts that you had associated with it, that actually lowered the urges and the cravings, which is significant, obviously. But again, it goes back the whole time I was researching the neuroscience of change. I was thinking, God, this sounds to me why 12 steps works, right? Because it's, the minute you're in these states of these urges, what are you supposed to do? Pick up a phone and say, I want to go use. I want to go act out. and then you're talking about it. I mean, in my own personal opinion, I think it's because the more you talk about it, the less it gets out of this back like language part of your brain and more up into your prefrontal cortex, where you can kind of rationalize, well, if I act out again, I'm going to lose my wife this time. And I've made so many commitments and promises to run my program as strong as I can. And I don't want to do that, or I don't want to be the person going back and failing. I don't know, but
well, I'm thinking
definitely.
through, we always talk about think it through. So yes, you're going to lose your wife, or all the shame. So like in the moment, you're going to be, ooh, like I get to use or act out or whatever. But right after that, it's going to be all the shame and all the negative feelings that spin you to do it again, because you're trying to escape the negative feeling. So it ends up creating that vicious circle. And the only way to not get into that toilet bowl is to step aside. So giving somebody the opportunity, that worked for me, is somebody helped reframe it, was a huge benefit for me. And like I said, completely reframed it in 2 minutes. The meeting hadn't even started and I'm going to be fine. So just sitting down and talking to somebody. So any questions from anybody that's joined?
Yeah, because I'd have to think while you are all typing or trying to figure out what you want to ask, I have to think that while you're in this state of struggle, you're wondering when things are going to change, or what you need to be doing to change the situation, or what is your partner willing to do, or how much you can manage the fact that so many of these changes have to be external to you, things that you don't have control of, right? I'm a control freak. I always have. That's one of my biggest struggles. And one thing I remember when I was kind of doing research on this is how damaging it can actually be when you want something to change, but specifically in a very specific outcome, right? So when we're dealing with betrayal trauma and unhealthy relationships, and then we're in this state of pain and hurt, it's like if my brain was like, okay, but the only possible outcome is that I need to stay married to this person and our family needs to be, stay unified. And that's how things need to change, is he needs to change in order to make that happen. And I need things to change in order to make that happen. That's saying that however this process of change is going to occur, it has to be this very manipulated, very controlled end result, which would kind of lead you to insanity, right? Because there's so many pieces outside of your control that's not going to make that possible.
One of the things I think can be a struggle for couples, and I'm sure you've experienced a lot of this too, is when a couple has a discovery and they're say best case scenario, both of them, are committed to the relationship and they are working on changing things, they aren't going to change at the exact same rate. And so it's always going to be this dance. And, hopefully the person with the addiction is, getting solid help and really, doing some things, but that does not mean that they're going to all of a sudden be able to meet the needs of their partner who they betrayed and totally deserves, all the support and everything. But there's this, this kind of a challenging dance of changing, but not necessarily at the same time, or, being able to connect exactly, in the in-between. So, any thoughts on, helping both people maybe be mindful of that, or
Right. Or I'd say even just tolerate
that's
that uneven, imbalanced level of change, right?
yeah.
I mean, I remember when I was in my own state of struggle, and let's say there was an imbalance of who was changing at what rate. And I had my specific expectations of where I needed to be, where this relationship needed to be, and what I needed to have to be happy. And I was, I was there and I was like kind of stepping, like arms raised, tapping my foot, saying like, get the heck there now, or I'm going to lose it. And my therapist kind of slowed me down for a minute and was like, Kristen, you know what's going on, right? Now you have your finger on the pulse of reality. You know what your non-negotiables are. You know what your boundaries are. You've done a lot of great work there. Are you going to stay here in this situation if it's been going on for 5 years? And I was like, well, hell no, but what she was just trying to say is like, you're not going to be in this state forever. You're not going to be okay with it being like this forever. Right now, for whatever reason, you personally, your kids, your reality, your situation, you're willing to wait it out and see how much longer you have to wait till change may happen. But don't think that this is a permanent, prison sentence for you. There is an out. Hang in there, and you'll know when it's time to go. And that did kind of relieve me in those moments, because I was being very, very controlling. I wanted something I wanted specific changes in specific ways on an exact timeline. And that's why I was going crazy.
Well, and I can get in the nevers, the always and forevers and nevers and all of that too. And it's like, it's always going to be like this. And so to your point, no, it's not. I won't tolerate that. So it isn't always. I've learned that everything is temporary, both the good and the bad. And so when things are going good, I try to, extra cherish that. But to have, to have the hope that it can get to the good again when things are challenging, but kind of to go, okay, I get to store up a recharge of my batteries on the in between. So we have a question. It says, my husband is 1 year and 3 months into recovery. Lately, he's been visible with his looking at other women. It's disheartening, understandably, for this person. Is there a recommendation on how to handle myself better? Am I allowed to be frustrated or sad at his visible 5+ head turns to look at the same person? Thoughts?
Right. Thoughts. Well, I want to congratulate you with just having that awareness, because again, similar to what she was saying, having that kind of mindful attention to that issue is great. I want you to have good instincts and intuition, and I want you to see that. But also verbalize either first internally what that means to you. How does it make you feel when you watch him do 5 head turns? Is it like, oh my gosh, here we go again? I have gained a few pounds and gosh, I feel like my body looks terrible. Maybe he would not do that if I was more attractive, or if I had sex with him more. I don't know. I mean, I can't finish those sentences for you, but it's so important that you connect when he does that behavior, what goes on inside your head. Because eventually when you've figured that out, and maybe not in an exact moment when he does it, but maybe when you've calmed down and you can have a conversation with him about it, you can say, I really need to understand what's going on with you when we're walking around and I see you do 5 head turns, kind of, I think that you're checking out another woman, checking out her body parts. I feel like it demoralizes me. I feel like you are back to the same old person, that you're objectifying this other human being instead of being human and seeing another human and being a compassionate, loving human being. And it makes me lose respect for you. Again, these are all my words, just from how I would experience something like that. But you need to become a master of understanding what your experience is, the story that you tell yourself and develop in your head when you see him do these behaviors.
Yeah, and I really agree with having the conversation when it's not, in the moment, and you can have presence and to be able to, stand up for what you're thinking and saying. But I would be very concerned, because objectifying other women and looking at body parts is very much, addictive behavior. I mean, that's the stuff that, is supposed to be worked on. And so I would be concerned that he's going to his meetings, he's talking to a sponsor, that he's actually working on his recovery plan. And it may be from a place of love and concern that you're able to say, I've noticed this and I'm concerned about a relapse, and talk about what your feelings are about it, but also that, that you're concerned for that. But absolutely, you are allowed to be frustrated and sad. That's,
Mm-hmm.
that is definitely at least skating on thin ice behavior with that. So
And
go ahead.
Nick, I think next webinar, I'm going to be talking about behavioral changes versus emotional changes, because right now I do have a lot of people that match that story that you shared. So I really appreciate it, meaning they are people who are in recovery. So they've been attending 12-step meetings. They have their recovery community. So let's even say like it's an alcoholic who says they have 5 years clean. So they haven't picked up a drink. So they have changed behaviorally, but they are lacking that kind of soul, emotional, spiritual change, right? Because when you're doing the head turns and you're checking out women's body parts, that is what that is. It's objectifying, right? So that woman is in this moment here for me, for my visual pleasure, to enjoy her boobs or her butt or whatever part of her body I want to deal with. I don't care that she's a mother, or as we've said when we do the AAAs, the child of God, or the, someone's daughter. I don't give a crap about that. She's there for my enjoyment. And so not doing that would be a behavioral change, right? So I'm not going to objectify women anymore by staring at them. But the emotional soul change is that I respect and love myself, and I respect and love other people. So I don't do that because I don't want to objectify another human being, because it makes me feel gross inside. And it feeds that shame voice in me that I am a bad person, that when I'm in my addiction, all I do is use and abuse people and manipulate people. And that feels really gross. So I want you to understand there's a really, really big difference when you have these partners in recovery, where there's behavioral changes of, okay, I'm going to meetings now. Okay, I've stopped, drinking alcohol. Okay, this, versus true soul, emotional, spiritual, human changes, where they fundamentally connect what feeds the voices in their head saying that they're a good human being, and what feeds the voices in their head saying that they are not a good human being.
So here's another one. I've been a recovering alcoholic for 5.5 years. Yay. And whenever I get the urge to drink, I picture what it used to, what I used to look like in my mental state. It only takes a few seconds to get back into the perspective and not drink. I think if we are betrayed by our partner, the type of visualization isn't helpful. I agree. I was talking about if the addict thinks about, here's what's going to happen if I act out, I'm going to lose my wife, whatever, I'm going to have the shame. So, but for the partner, yes, don't, that would not be good. I think if you are betrayed by your partner, it's not good. For me, I needed to be angry, be a victim, feel sorry for myself. I needed validation from someone who wasn't ready to admit any wrongdoing. It wasn't until I let go of wanting that validation and looking inward at my own validation, self-love, and self-worth that I was able to make that change. I needed every day as a new opportunity for growth and self-love. I 100% agree. And I'm so, and this is me, I'm a control freak too, but I'm also a control freak in the I won't be a victim. So I'm always, I had a particularly difficult situation in 2017, and my first thought was, I am not going to be a victim. And I was like, how can I empower myself to reframe this and look at it in a different way and make it an opportunity? And that's what I did. And it was hard, and it took time. I did that immediately, and I had to keep thinking about that, kind of like you're talking about with a client, that wakes up in the morning and goes, I'm a single mom. Here's my present situation, and these things have happened, but I have an opportunity today to, I can be hopeful that this is temporary, but that I'm working towards something different and good. So I love that. Thank you for sharing that.
Right.
A new opportunity for growth and self-love. Yes.
And there is always a time for the concept of victim, right? Like the previous question, person who asked the question was saying, do I have the right to be frustrated and sad? And yes, I mean, you have the right to say, these are the ways that I have been victimized. I've been lied to, I've been manipulated, it doesn't discount the fact that I might be capable of doing that to somebody else entirely as well, or that there can't be forgiveness or grace somewhere in between there. There absolutely, it has to be a moment where you acknowledge that you've been victimized.
And somehow that's easier for me to handle. that I've been victimized. I'm totally willing to go there, but I refuse to be a victim. And I think I'm going to talk to my personal therapist about that. Like, what is that about me? But, you know, like, I mean, I think it's just a little self-preservation. I'm willing to say that, you know, I've been betrayed, I've been victimized or whatever, but, you know, I think internalizing that I am now a victim is, you know, that's just hard for me personally. Not saying it's wrong for anybody else.
No, I know. I get it. I struggle with that as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So, you know, I'm thinking about the 12 steps. I know so many people that come in and they change just enough. Like you're talking about, you know, that there's some behavior changes and they change just enough to, you know, to stay in the, I'm going to stay in recovery, you know, mode. And bless their hearts, they'll say, I don't have to be perfect. God loves me how I am and all that. And I'm like, I believe God loves me how I am and I don't have to be perfect, but I also believe that I'm supposed to keep growing and changing. So like that comment was, you know, new opportunities for growth and self-love. So, and I also think if you don't keep doing that, you're still too close to that, you know, I might relapse, you know, because I haven't made enough changes to, you know, have the bandwidth to handle some difficult situations if they come up. So.
Absolutely.
But if nobody else has any questions or comments, I think we will hit the stop button and post this to the website, sexandrelationshiphealing.com. If you haven't registered, please do so. And then you'll get notifications of when the various opportunities to connect are.
Yes, and I've gotten a few email after each session asking more questions, and I read them all. So like I said, if there's a subject matter that you would like me to talk about or expand on, or seeking help, then I think, you know, my email is usually there. I don't know, usually.
Feel free to type it in the chat.
I know, where is this thing? Slow going. And then there was some other question.
Well, somebody commented, clarifying the victim thing. I think for me, it was acknowledging that my partner treated me like crap and realizing that I needed to be treated better. I 100% agree. And like I said, for me, that it's really easy to go, oh yeah, I've been victimized. But like, I think just labeling myself a victim. And like I said, I'm just owning that that's probably a me thing. So if whatever works for all of you, I'm not, it's just, that's all good. So, but thank you for clarifying, and you do deserve to be treated better. I mean, that's one of those things I want us all to give and receive the love that we deserve. So, but yeah, so Kristen typed her email address in there, so feel free to grab that a moment if you'd like. You can also reach her on sexandrelationshiphealing.com. Her bio is up on the website, so you can find her and click through, you know, if you don't catch that. So until 2019, you know, for this group, but, you know, watch the schedule. We'll let you know when the next one will be. But, you know, thank you for joining us today, and we'll connect the next time.
Happy holidays.
Thank you.